Today, Somewhere on Earth invites you to Tasmania, where the Pacific and Indian Oceans meet, in the roaring Forties, south of Australia. Tasmania is a land inaccessible in places, where the dense forests go right down to the sea. Richard Bennet lives on Bruny, a little island off Hobart, the largest town in Tasmania. On this slip of land, this photographer has found the light, colors, and the seascapes that never cease to delight him. Steve, a former ranger, likes to explore the forest on the lookout for trees that could very well go unnoticed. And yet, they are nicknamed yellow gold. Huon Pine trees can live as long as 10,000 years. They are one of the oldest forms of life on our planet. Steve is one of the rare people able to recognize them in this forest. Liam and James are two brothers wild about surfing and deserted beaches. Their passion leads them into the heart of the bush. Tasmania is their playground.
It's really empowering. It makes you feel like you're able to survive on your own. There's nothing, there's no houses, there's no roads, there's no cars, there's no anything. It's just us, the ocean, the bush.
Its geographical situation makes Tasmania an island destined to remain in the shadow of the Australian giant. Its isolation has ensured its protection. Its land and vegetation are unspoiled. Tasmania, discovered in the 17th century, became a port of call for famous navigators. Its coasts have always been buffeted by the violence of ocean, waves, and wind. For a long time, the interior of the island remained inaccessible to the rare sailors who landed here. Geographers and sailors gave it a concrete existence. They charted its coastlines and made it known to the world. From that point on, those who chose to remain here were men in the image of the island, genuine and solid. The island has changed little since the arrival of the Europeans. Richard has lived here for some time now, off the coast of Tasmania's largest town, Hobart.
I like space. I like to be able to light a fire, to cook on a fire, and I like to be able to go and anchor in a bay and be the only people there and not see other people. Getting up early and going out when the tide's coming in the morning, the fish seem to like that particularly well. But then, given that we live in the roaring Forties, where the weather is often windy and wet, we need to take the opportunity to fish when conditions are reasonable. I think that's the secret, and we seem to have a fish. Voila! I made my living doing the things that I enjoy. I bushwalked and published books, and I photographed the Sydney Hobart yacht race because it's photography that I love, and I do it from aircraft that I find very exciting. So I built my career around doing what I wanted to do. I don't really do much that I don't want to do. It is a Port Jackson shark. We will let him go. I don't eat sharks.
Richard particularly enjoys these moments of peace and quiet when he returns home from his expeditions through the Tasmanian bush. The photographer frequently travels across these wide open spaces.
Wilderness has the wonderful effect of giving your emotions a workout. You get cold, you get hot, you get tired, you get hungry, you get wet, you get thirsty, and sometimes you become afraid, and you become excited, and you come home with a feeling of I guess spiritual satisfaction in having spent some quiet times in the wilderness, and then you look back at your busy life and you see it with a perspective, because you've had the opportunity to get away from it for a little while.
Bruny is a small Tasmanian island. Richard chose to live here for its light and its landscapes. He calls himself a painter of still images. He has the soul of a vagabond, and what he likes most is wandering. For him, every moment has its own emotional color.
Wherever you go in the world, there are very subtle differences in the colours, in the palette of the landscape. And you get a different shade to the sea here in the Southern Ocean to the colours a little bit further north. And the beaches are different. They're subtly different in softness or hardness to walk on, and the colour of the sand varies, and also the interaction of lagoons and creeks and water with the sand forms unique patterns that become like a signature to a particular place that is unique.
Crossing this little island from north to south is like approaching the ends of the earth. This lighthouse is a last landmark, a final reminder on this little island before miles and miles of ocean. They are no more than a handful, the sailors who give this lighthouse one last glance as they head south on their way towards higher latitudes, towards the mythical land of ice.
Well, this is the southernmost part of Australia, and Antarctica is due south that way. There is no land apart from Macquarie Island between here and Antarctica.
Tasmania may be a slightly forgotten island, but its port, Hobart, is known to scientists the world over. This is where they embark for 20 days at sea on their way to Antarctica. The mission of the famous French ship, the Astrolabe, is to supply the research station of Dumont d'Urville, where hundreds of scientists are based. In the southern hemisphere, the summer from October to March is when the ice floe breaks up. At last, the trip is possible. Scientists from the four corners of the Earth have managed to protect the Antarctic's land of ice. The South Pole has become a global sanctuary. Tasmanians are very committed to keeping their lands unspoiled. Today, entire regions of the island are World Heritage Sites. And Richard is one of those with a deep respect for nature. Richard likes these moments when time seems suspended, holding its breath. Here, two opposing influences sometimes give birth to impressive storms. This strip of sand is a fragile border between two of the world's largest oceans. On one side, the Indian Ocean. On the other, the Pacific.
I think being close to the Southern Ocean always gives a unique atmosphere. There's a wildness to the landscape, and I seem to be happy when I'm in wild places. I like storms in particular. I photograph storms, and memorable times in the bush have been in enduring storms. I think we become very insignificant compared with the unpredictable power of nature. The ocean is very unforgiving, and it goes on unrelenting forever.
Richard's reputation as a photographer is due largely to his pictures of the annual Sydney Hobart race, one of the world's most prestigious regattas. Each of his photos tells the story of the crews that come to take up the challenge. Richard knows them all. He's been photographing them for 40 years. Land, sea, and sky. Richard has a passion for aerial photography. There's nothing like the light of dawn to take the little island of Bruny by surprise.
Tasmania is a photographer's paradise. There's so much variety, and it changes with seasons, and being such a small island, it's so compact, so there's endless variety. I just love aircraft, and it's like a magic carpet and having a bird's eye view of the world. And the wonderful thing about an aircraft is you can move quickly and you can change your position, and you can see the changing light around the subject as you move. And you can move in close and get high and low, and aerial photographs have impact because not many people see the landscape from the air.
On the little island of Bruny, Richard has managed to create the life he dreamed of. Tasmanian born, he has never left this land. Tasmania resembles those who live here. Its people defend and protect it. It lives within them all. It is part of them. Steve is a former ranger. He has roamed this forest all his life. This is where he saw his very first Huon pine tree. This tree might go unnoticed, but for one particularity that makes it unique in the world. The oldest of them can be 10,000 years old. These exceptional trees grow only 1 or 2 millimeters a year. This very slow growth allows them to survive for centuries and centuries. Reaching them is a real challenge.
Oh, it's good technical fun and gives you a good workout. But when you're on a serious expedition, getting through that can slow your travel down to less than 1 kilometre a day. And therefore you've got to really plan for the trip.
He starts his expedition with a visit to an old friend. For Steve, this tree is one of the most representative of its species. You could pass right by it without noticing it. The height of this Huon pine might not be impressive, but its breadth should command respect. Dozens of trunks feeding on one another.
This is a fascinating example of the way Huon pine can grow vegetatively. What happens is the tree can fall down for whatever reason. It can rot out at the base, but it doesn't necessarily have to die. What it can do is sprout again from the fallen trunk, and it can do that over and over again. And there's one example that we know of where the one single tree has been regenerating vegetatively like this for 10,000 years. And that's one of the oldest living single organisms that we know about.
And that's exactly what fascinates Steve about the Huon pine. Nature seems to defy the passing of time.
To spend a night up here in the far reaches of the Gordon River, where many miles from any road, many miles from any habitation, and it's a truly awesome experience. The forest comes alive at night. The forest animals sleep in the daytime, and I can lie in my tent and hear the forest live. And it's just really wonderful to be out here. The adventure to the big tree is more philosophical in a way. We don't need necessarily to go and inspect it personally, but it means a lot to me personally to know that that tree, that particular individual tree, is still there and is standing and is healthy, and it is an adventure.
Steve is so committed because these trees almost disappeared. When the English took over Tasmania at the beginning of the 19th century, they needed wood to repair and construct boats. That was the beginning of an inexorable process of destruction. With its slow growth, the Huon pine produces very dense, robust wood, rich in essential oil. It became very sought after for its exceptional qualities, above all its resistance to seawater. It is the perfect wood for boat building. This sailboat, the Gypsy, was built in 1914 out of Huon Pine. Steve is often on board, and this boat is a reminder. He and Chris, head of the Strahan Rangers, are trying to protect these trees.
So, Steve, you'll be leaving by seaplane from Strahan.
Yes.
And you'll be flying through to the mouth of the Gordon.
Right.
Coming up to the Gordon. And
Yeah,
look at these.
capture that one in here.
Capture these trees in here. Because
The Rangers know full well that this vulnerable forest needs to be protected. Chris also likes this otherworldly place. He and Steve organize reconnaissance missions together.
Not a worry.
The thing to be really careful with the river, as you know, Steve, is that if we get rain, the river can rise really fast. Navigating in this country is really dangerous. And we just evacuated a guy the other night from here for snake bite.
Oh, right. Yes, snakes are an interesting problem right now.
They're moving. They're very
moving,
active.
yes.
And they're even in their forests, they're active.
Yes, it's been a year or two since I've been up here, so my memory's slipping on that. Help me. Good. Well, when I see the view from the air, I realise just how privileged I am to be able to see it from the air. It's a rare privilege. How large the Earth actually is. And it's really interesting to be on a part of the Earth where the impact of man is so limited. It brings back to the reality of the real world, the way it was.
The only way to get deeper into the forest is by seaplane. Flying is not always possible. Violent winds and even snowstorms sometimes blow up in this region of western Tasmania, even in summer. Not to mention the ever-present mist.
The cloud looks very romantic. The fog in the valleys is very atmospheric, but if the aircraft gets lost in that fog, it can be extremely dangerous because the mountains are much higher than we're flying. And we're flying visual, we hold our breath that we don't get too cloud-bound. Very dramatic landing. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, it's a great spot.
Okay, thanks very much.
No worries, eh? Have a good trip.
That was a good flight.
Cheers.
And I'll see you later when you catch it.
See ya.
See ya.
In order to carry out his mission, Steve heads up the Gordon River. Apart from seaplane, the river is the only possible way for him to get into the heart of the forest. Along these banks is the site of unbridled nature. The Huon pines used to grow thick along these banks, like a lost tribe reigning over the river, long before man did. Highly prized for its golden yellow wood, the Huon pine was overexploited. Today, there's nothing left of those landscapes. Except here. This Huon pine is a vestige of the past, a survivor of a very somber chapter of Tasmania's history. As he goes up the Gordon River, Steve travels back in time. In the 19th century, all the Huon pines growing along these banks were systematically cut down for boat building. All those accessible from the water met the same fate, which makes the tree even more precious today. Steve has always fought for this forest to keep its soul, by protesting dam projects, then later by fighting against erosion. By coming back here to the banks of the Gordon River, he's making sure that his commitment is still bearing fruit.
We will attempt to relocate them, but it's a real expedition because it was decided that we wouldn't mark the site with a track or tapes so that the site would be truly protected. And the best way it could be protected is for people not to know where it is. If people knew where it is, then the site might be abused. So our philosophy has been that if people want to try hard enough to go and find the sites, they're welcome to. It's a public national park, but we won't go to any length of effort to assist them.
Steve always thinks of his ancestors when he comes here, because the Gordon River was also the scene of a human tragedy. Tasmania, a far-off land for the English, was first used by them as a penal colony. Convicts sentenced to hard labor were forced to cut down Huon pines. Many of them died of exhaustion or disease. The Gordon River would be their final resting place.
It's very easy to get lost in the forest. The forest has no particular features anywhere. It's a big lowland with very thick forest. So you have to be careful with the use of a compass to make sure you can get back to the river, which is where you can locate your position again with the GPS. Oh, people have been lost. People, highly experienced people, have wandered off into the bush thinking that they knew their way around, not even particularly thinking of going far, and then discovered that they couldn't tell which way the river was because the cloud covered the sun. The forest didn't have any particular features, so it was impossible to tell which way the river was. And they would wander around in circles for quite a while, and in the case I'm thinking about, they were very lucky to stumble back to the river before dark.
Steve is well aware of these dangers, but still he always goes that little bit further, because he knows that somewhere in this forest, other specimens might be hiding. That's what pushes him, discovering Huon pines, listing them, and especially noting their location. For the last few years, there has been strict protection for the Huon pine. Their exploitation is totally prohibited. Only the old stumps left by the convicts can still be used. Its wood has become so precious, it's been named yellow gold.
There's only 3 areas left in southwest Tasmania where these big old fellas still live. This is one of them, and we're in a little forest here, and I can look around and I can see another tree over there that would be 2,000 years old, and I passed one a little further back there that would be similar, and we have a beautiful little copse of trees here that are all truly ancient, thousands of years old, literally. Well, the southwest wilderness is huge. It covers 20% of Tasmania, and we only found this by accident. So, sure, there may be other coops of trees, maybe some even more old, more ancient. It'll be great fun to go and find them, yeah. We had an idea it was here. We heard a report that it was here, but we hadn't come and found out and recorded it. And now we know about it, and we can take special care to make sure that these trees continue to do their thing, yeah.
Back from his expedition, Steve keeps quiet about his discoveries. Except to Chris. Protecting Huon pines requires discretion. This is a way of paying homage to these venerable trees. In Steve's eyes, these amazing trees, capable of being born again from their own remains, seem like the last masters of time.
I really like the energy of the sea, and it's a really good source of handle material. Quite often there's some really nice bits of driftwood or bone. You know, I get now and then I get some whalebone, or there's all sorts of things wash up on the seashores.
Precisely. This ordinary piece of wood that looks quite dull is actually a whalebone, washed up onto the sand one stormy day. When John came here 20 years ago, he discovered a passion for a trade that had almost disappeared. John is one of the last blacksmiths in Tasmania.
I think anything that's been made with passion absorbs the energy of the maker. because you're handling it, you're touching it. And I don't think it's such a big deal. You know, it doesn't mean to say I have to make a religion out of it. It's just energy, and the actual elements that are in the knife absorb the energy of the maker, and people can pick that knife up or whatever that's been made by hand, and they can feel that energy in it. Rubber ducky, you're the one. You make me feel like so much fun. This is great, just lying back looking at the clouds and listening to the birds and watching the trees, just relaxing. You couldn't do this in the city, could you? Yeah, this is purely Tasmanian, this one. Yep, 100%. That's a good idea, to sit in amongst the bush. That's great. Relax, stress relief, it's good.
Hey, John.
Hey, Wayne, how you going, dude?
John is known in the region for making solid knives that are perfect for the bush. He says that his reputation has traveled well beyond Tasmania. He has, he says, even forged blades for samurai swords.
But it's got to be solid.
Yeah, oh yeah, really strong
It's really solid,
a high chrome
Yeah, right.
stainless steel. We could use a bit of red gum. That's pretty solid wood. They make railway sleepers out of that.
Yeah, right.
Or actually, something you can grab onto, a bit of antler.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Toby uses that out at sea for antler filleting fish, because, you know, you got, in rough weather and that, you know, you got something to grip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, right.
yeah. And that's a good idea, I mean.
John knows the two Corey brothers well. Liam and James are surfers. What they like is going off together on expeditions lasting days and days, far away from Hobart, the city where they live. Liam, the elder brother, is a nurse. James, the younger brother, is a medical student. Both brothers love this maverick life. Thanks to their father, they both learned very young how to make do with nothing or next to nothing.
That's the plan to go down Saturday.
Yeah.
We could,
This morning, the swell looks promising. They're in luck. As they spend all their free time in search of waves, they always leave at the drop of a hat.
basically looking at riding our bikes with all our equipment into the southwest World Heritage Area, which takes up sort of 1/3 of Tasmania. And we will ride our bikes for some time into where the road finishes, and then we will take our backpacks and our surfboards and walk down to the southwest coast. People call you crazy, but when you do it very regularly, it's not to us. It's not crazy. It's normal and it's perfect and it's really good.
So these are my 4 little beautiful chooks, a couple of ducks. Ducks are called Darth and Vader. Chooks don't have names, but they lay lots of really good eggs. And over here, got big crop, corn up there, tomatoes, peas, most of the veggies we need at the moment.
Out in the yard, there are hundreds of bicycles, from old models to recent ones. Liam is known far and wide for his passion for two-wheelers. Little by little, he has become the local bike repairman. At his home, there are bicycles everywhere, and sometimes even where you would least expect them. The bicycle gives the two brothers a chance to take advantage of the country. They like open space, having the horizon for themselves, and feeling alone in the world. like here at Pedder Lake. Situated in the very heart of Tasmania, Pedder Lake is the largest body of fresh water in Australia. In the 1970s, several large dams were built here, causing vast stretches of sandy beaches to disappear. The Tasmanians were scandalized and became ardent defenders of their island. Today, this spot symbolizes the fight to safeguard Tasmania. Liam and James have to travel several hundred kilometers. They both take part from time to time in triathlons. They both share the pleasure of pushing themselves to their limits.
Bike touring is just awesome, and doing it in Tassie to go surfing is just the ultimate combination, basically. Like, going on a surf trip is fun, going for a ride is fun. You put them together and you've got a lethal mix.
Yeah. For me, I think it's a pride, like a pride thing. You feel really proud that you've walked out your front door, you've got on your bike with all your gear, and you've ridden to wherever you're going. You've walked, surfed, whatever, come back all by yourself.
The waves of Tasmania's deserted beaches aren't easy to approach. You have to work for them. After cycling comes walking. From now on, our two surfers will carry only the bare essentials.
My 6'6" baby. She's long and she's slender.
Can you hear the surf? Well, the sun's just risen. That's nice. It's pretty early in the morning. It's about 6:30, and we've got about another 10 kilometres to go to where we're hoping to surf this morning. So just kind of cruising along.
Our two wave hunters are well aware that as far as the weather is concerned, nothing is certain, and the ocean has a mind of its own. A year ago, they spent several weeks roaming the wild coasts of Tasmania alone, with just their backpacks and their boards. They hiked along beaches and riverbanks where few people had walked before them, as there were neither paths nor posted trails.
There's a wave, there's a wave, there's a wave! So, looks like there might be a possibility that James will get a little ride out there. So if I try and get some dinner and he tries to get some waves, we should come up with the goods, hopefully.
Sounds all right.
eating shellfish like abalone, living simply. This is the brothers' lifestyle, one of the bases of their complicity. By becoming one with these places, they're letting nature guide them in their apprenticeship of life.
It's fantastic. Nothing better than paddling around out there with my brother, watching him catch some waves, finding a bit of dinner, seeing the sun come out every now and again. It's beautiful. Love this kind of life.
Wandering in this environment has always brought the two brothers closer together. On each stage of the journey, they learn something. On every beach, the currents and the winds are different. They have to know how to observe, to foresee the dangers so as to avoid traps.
It's really empowering. It makes you feel like you're able to survive on your own. There's nothing, there's no houses, there's no roads, there's no cars, there's no anything. It's just us, the ocean, the bush.
In Tasmania at least, like, I just always have days like this. And like when it usually comes home about when you're eating the abalone and the light gets good, sun setting, you've had a nice surf and a big walk, and you just go, shit, I could die. Like, we've sort of achieved perfection, you know? Like, that's a little bit how it feels, just when everything is so beautiful.
The two brothers never know in advance where their wanderings will lead them, if it's not to a beach. However, they have gained an intuitive knowledge of their island. It's ingrained in them.
I think it's really just the search for new places and new waves that's sort of driven us. Like, it's awesome to be out here. It's fun to camp. It's fun to fish, and it's the waves are really good. So the whole adventure's always worth it. But it's that sort of search for something new and something different and something that's a little bit off the beaten track that has driven us to have a look.
We're working on that. When you're spending days and days and days alone with your brother in the bush, if you're fighting, then it's not that fun. So
good opportunities for conflict resolution.
Yeah, good opportunities to be nice to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is a good thing.
One of the best things about being out here is that it puts all the rest of your experiences in life into perspective and makes you enjoy everything a bit more, I think.
The quest for the perfect wave leads Liam and James to face many challenges. After days spent trekking through the bush, they give themselves up completely to the pleasures of surfing. They have the feeling that they've finally arrived somewhere.